My name is Lisa Mitchell. I'm a managing director at Techstars in Kansas City. And I spent a significant amount of my life doing ecosystem development work with the Kauffman Foundation, focused on government, industry, and early stage companies, and how the intersection of the three can help support economic growth at both a regional and a global level. So I'm super excited to introduce you to a very global group that we have here. And I'm gonna let each one of them introduce themselves. But again, the goal of this session is to learn from three individuals that are dedicating their life to the topic of Industry 4.0 and specifically tied to different parts of the world. Some are intersecting across multiple parts of the world, which obviously makes sense. And the discussion will focus on what's working, what's not working, and how are we moving toward, and specific examples of moving toward Industry 4.0. So I'm going to keep us in our square here. And Ashutosh, start with you and have you both introduce yourself, the role that you're playing, and the focus of your group.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's good afternoon there, and for most of you guys, I'm in a time zone wherein it'll be the next. So a little bit about myself. I think I'll give an introduction of the Technology Innovation Hub that has been set up at the Indian Institute of Technology here, and then I'll talk about myself. So Indian government has set up some technology innovation hubs across the country, and IIT, which is Indian Institute of Delhi, is one of the renowned institutes across the globe. We have been given a mandate to work in the area of collaborative robotics. Now, it cuts across multiple verticals, and Industry 4.0 is one of them. So as a part of this Technology Innovation Hub, we are supposed to bridge the gap between academia and industry. So what I'm trying to say is that if industry is looking forward to something that them, they are not dependent on their own research teams, which are working as a part of their organization, but the academia comes along, or they join hands, and then they get into something which offers a product or some technology which can be transferred, so that some of the social needs or economic needs are fulfilled. So I think that's the idea. It is happening at a certain level right now in the country, but I think government felt that it can be a more close-knit collaboration between academia and industry. And we have seen some of the good examples outside India, including institutes like Stanford, wherein the research wing of Stanford is doing pretty well. So I think trying to tread that path and trying to create this new sort of a model or more evolved model in the country. That's what the objective is. I have joined as a founding CEO of this Technology Innovation Hub. And I'm trying to look forward to working with organizations who have worked in this kind of an ecosystem. Looking forward to even startups who would like to work with us to take what we are developing here, to take the technology not only in India but also outside India. And that's about it. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Lisa, and looking forward to introduction from the other panelists.
Okay, great. And I don't know about anybody else, but I can't see the three of you. You have become invisible. but maybe it's just to me. I'm sorry, Yared.
We are right here.
Okay, great. So why don't we turn it over to you again? We are all very well aware that Israel is good at many, many things, including vaccinations. But we're here today to talk about specifically the work that you're doing, who's funding it, and outcomes to your organization that are in which you are measured by.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Lisa, for having me. Well, I'm part of Startup Nation Central. My name is Yariv Lotan, and I'm responsible in the last 2.5 years, on strategic sector development. Now, strategic sector development is actually a composition of two sets of words. One is strategic sectors, what it is, what they are actually, and what is sector development in general. So for us, Startup Nation Central is a non-profit for impact organization aiming to build bridges of innovations with multinationals across the world, seeking innovation and innovative solutions, and we are helping them engage effectively with Israeli innovation in all sectors, with all technologies. Over the years, we have developed an understanding that there are some sectors within the overall innovation ecosystem that can be of great opportunity for Israel and for the innovation ecosystem, and we decide to proactively develop it. So we start up with digital health, move to agri and food, and finally, some 2.5 years ago, we moved into Industry 4.0. Very few people actually know that despite its size, Israel is actually the third largest country to invest VC money, VC dollars in Industry 4.0. So we don't have a very large or reputed industry as compared to other countries like Japan, Germany, the US, obviously, and other countries. But in terms of Industry 4.0 innovation and industrial innovation in general, Israel is very strong at, and we have been developing the sector in a way that I'll discuss later. But in general, I would say that we are following methodology of building an innovation valley for that sector, as for other sectors that I mentioned before. And we have a way about doing that. But the KIIs, as I like to say, the key impact indicators that we follow are those that are business oriented, which means POCs, proof of concepts, pilots, obviously commercial agreements, and investments. Those are the things that we want to impact and would create an impact on making sure that this ecosystem of Industry 4.0 companies would continue to grow and strengthen over time.
And Yariv, are you, you made a comment that I would love for you to clarify. You said innovation valleys. Can you explain what you mean by that?
So in a way, we looked at what is going to happen in different hubs of innovation and how they're going to develop. And what we found out is if you combine the globalization on the one hand, digitization, which COVID has obviously accelerated tremendously, and open innovation that has been around for 20 years, but over the last 10 years have grown more and more, then you realize that you don't necessarily have to be in the valley only to be in the best area for every sector. So we actually looked at what creates the right ecosystem, and will create, by the way, not only in Israel, but definitely in many other places. And when we looked at that, we said, okay, an innovation valley is actually a valley of technology companies that is surrounded by three mountains. The mountain of customers, which basically represent the demand, the need. A mountain of capital, with all the investors from angels all the way to private equity, obviously including VCs and CVCs. And a mountain of influencers, which basically is a coalition, if you like, of consulting companies, consortiums like the Industrial Internet Consortium, communities. One of them is we have founded, government, obviously, in Israel and outside. And we'll probably discuss that more later on. And obviously, like as Atush said, academy. How does academia promote that? So if you have those three mountains high enough, strong enough, connected even between themselves, not only with the startups, but among themselves, corporates with investors and corporates with academy, and with obviously with startups and local talent, then you actually get to have an innovation valley and a prosperous one.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for clarifying that. And Dan, my US partner here, who is located in Detroit, Michigan, where we all know has been quite an industrial hub for a long period of time. Why don't you jump in and talk about yourself and your organization and your key metrics?
Yeah, Lisa, thank you very much. So it's an honor to be here and be a part of this event today. I'm the executive director for Centropolis Accelerator. We're an organization, nonprofit organization, that is partnered with two organizations, Automation Alley and Lean Rocket Lab, that are focused on manufacturing NGOs that are focused on trying to create economic development benefits to the state of Michigan. So we launched the nation's first Industry 4.0 Accelerator and over a year ago, and we were able to track 250 applications from 30 different countries. In fact, outside the US, the two countries that are producing the most I4O technology applications are Israel and India. and we work very closely with organizations that are closely tied, including Arabs, to some of the innovation that's happening in those hubs. But our key metric is really in a couple different areas. One is, with this being a global accelerator, what we want to do is attract some of the best I4O technologies into the state of Michigan and hope that obviously those companies see this as at least one outpost that makes sense to have operations and develop their technology and sell their technology. Importantly, the second metric is to help Michigan-based manufacturers adopt these technologies to bring about efficiencies, which gives them better margins and allows them to be more globally competitive. So the way we did this is we onboarded about several manufacturers, big and small, to actually be corporate partners. And we work very closely with their manufacturing operational efficiency teams or I4O tech scouts, and even in some cases, corporate venture arms, to take a look at some of the companies that we have vetted and we think have compelling technologies, whether they're from Israel, India, Silicon Valley, or right here in our home state of Michigan, and then look to pilot and demonstrate those technologies to bring about efficiencies, and then go enterprise-wide if it makes sense. So, and we're working with big companies that obviously many of you would know: Whirlpool, Magna, Forrestia, Denso, American Axle, Bosch Rexroth, Lear. A lot of system integrators as well, like Kamal and Stefanini and Siemens and others, because as you know, a company in Israel or India may really need a automation distributor or a system integrator to be able to sell, service, install to customers over here in North America. So.
Great, thanks, Dan. And I'd like to open it up. Obviously, anybody can ask a question to each other. We will also answer questions coming into the chat from the audience. But I'd like to start with, the audience here is both large companies as well as a significant number of early stage companies, startups, that might not necessarily be familiar even with the language around 4.0 technology. And what are the problem statements there in 4.0 technology that you all are looking to address for manufacturers? Can you any of you talk a little bit about that? Dan, if you want to start,
were sure. Up. We work very closely when we were working with our corporate partners to talk about the problem statements that they're trying to solve with I4O technology. So they, obviously it differs quite a bit based on the manufacturer, and certainly a small manufacturer versus a large manufacturer, highly automated versus more discrete part manufacturing. However, there's a number of consistent things that we're seeing. There's a lot of interest in AI-enabled vision systems, specifically to do a better job of quality part checking, good part versus bad part. And also as a way to reduce operating expenditures. Many manufacturing facilities use a lot of manual inspection workers, and we're finding that the AI-enabled inspection systems, visual systems, are getting very reliable to the point where they're even more reliable than the manual inspection workers, right? So we're seeing that as at least one of the problem statements they're trying to solve. Certainly better throughput through the organization and better yields. So that's where data analytics come in. There was quite a bit of talk about that in the earlier session. I could tell you, I can't name the manufacturer, but one of our partners literally improved their throughput by $18 million in 1 year by just improving their yield, by doing a better job of, integrating 20 different databases and signals coming from different machines and PLCs, and being able to determine defects before they happen, right? So they took their yield from 60 to 88% overnight. And as you can imagine, the benefits that provided them financially. We're also seeing, quite a bit of attention to problems of trying to do, sophisticated work with robotics, specifically things that normally only humans would do, like bin picking, right? So picking parts and or subsystems off of a pallet or in a bin, and being able to do that reliably with more sophisticated vision systems on robots. We're seeing wearable technology, connected worker technology to improve quality of work, less downtime, less waste of labor, trying to figure out what they need to do, from day to day, hour to hour. So those are just examples.
Okay, and Yariv and Ashutosh, are you looking to address different problems than Dan just talked about relative to Industry 4.0?
So I think that you need to recognize, Industry 4.0 basically stands, when the German invented the term, about the fourth industrial revolution. And usually industrial revolutions demanded high capex. And I think that you need to recognize that I think most of this revolution, if you like, is a digital one. And digital is usually much cheaper to implement. It doesn't give you any discounts when it comes to changing processes and having people and culture change with it. And you still need to do a lot of the hard work. But in terms of high investments, it's actually lighter than the previous revolutions. And that is why I think Israel has a lot to offer in that space, because it's a group of digital capabilities, technologies that are now being applied in a different setting, in an industrial setting, which has its own unique features, also changing from one industry vertical to another. By the way, it's another issue we need to discuss. We say Industry 4, but each vertical has its own needs and language and focus areas and so on. And whenever I meet a company and they say, we do it predictive maintenance, we can solve it for everyone, I say, okay, they're not yet focused. You need to be able to pick one or two verticals. Make sure you prove your value. Make sure that they are an early adopter, and then move on potentially to others. I've seen some companies in Israel actually doing solutions in many verticals. We just released a very interesting guidebook of best or applied Industry 4 solutions, where we looked at the companies applying solution per vertical. And I can tell you, the food sector and the oil and energy are definitely the ones that have the most solutions applied already. Whereas in automotive, it's a little bit slower. In electronics, it's also strong, not as the two I mentioned, but still. And you can see that it's very different from one sector to another. So we are trying to focus on getting the needs from multinationals, understanding in many cases they themselves are trying to figure out what they need and where they focus first, but getting those needs and making sure that is the problem that we fall in love with and not the technology that we want to apply.
Always true.
Yeah.
Ashutosh, relative to Israel, I mean, you've just now heard both Dan and Yuri talk about the problem statements that they're trying to focus on. Does that differ in Israel for some of the corporate partners that you're working with? I mean, in India?
Yes. So to a certain extent, yes. And I'll tell you the reason. I think one of the biggest difference between India as a country and most other countries across the globe is that we do not have a workforce problem. I mean, we have such a cheap labor available in the country. So when we talk about robotics, a lot of times it is considered synonymous to displacement or replacement of labor. So when we were trying to create this hub, we deliberately named it as a collaborative robotics technology innovation hub. And why collaborative? Because we want to say that robotics is not going to displace or replace manpower. It is going to complement a human labor, is what our objective is, and this is how we are trying to sell it in the country. because robotics to a certain extent or industrial automation to a certain extent is inevitable. You can't avoid that. But as Yariv mentioned, I think we have to pick up some of the early adopters, or maybe some of the good success stories that we can make is the same thing that we are working on right now. Two important aspects that we are working on right now is, one is connected assets and connected machines, which is something which is a challenge, as of now. And the other piece is, predictive or preventive maintenance. I think these are the two, areas which we are specifically targeting, and even the industry understands the same, aspect when we talk about industrial automation or Industry 4.0. So I think a lot of interaction is happening on these two, aspects of Industry, 4.0. Others to a limited, I think, we would want to create a success story, a molecule of success, and then people will start accepting it in at a much faster rate, is what we feel. So that's how we are going ahead.
Yeah. Dan, you heard a comment that Yariv made, that there's an assumption that the food industry and another industry are farther along in digitization than the automotive industry. And I'm wondering about A, your reaction to that, and B, because you are, I think, funded also by state and potentially local government, how do you react as well to startups that are, or early stage companies that are actually selling into big companies that will in fact be a reduction of workforce if it is successful? How do you address that with your government partners? So 2 questions.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of questions there, and I think they're all really important to address. First of all, I think a lot of cases, people look at the automotive industry and almost kind of a whipping boy, in that it's not really moving at the speed that other industries are, which I highly, I definitely disagree with. I mean, I have the luxury of, visiting these plants, and some of the most efficient plants in the world, like GM's ICE plant uses 3 labor hours per engine out the door. It's the most efficient plant in the world, right? So, the companies we're working with are incredibly advanced in the I4O technology they're already instituting and the efficiencies they've already gained, even efficiencies in zero landfill and reduced energy consumption. And I think one of the problems, though, is, to your earlier you made, there are some industries that have really adopted digitization in a way that's powerful. The printing industry is an example of that. But they also have a roll-to-roll process, right? A lot of our manufacturers, take Lear, they're making seats and other, IP modules. Whirlpool's making a wide variety of appliances. Magna, makes drive systems and fabrication. There are a bunch of discrete fabrication and manufacturing processes that come together in an end unit, right? It's very hard. It's not a roll-to-roll process, right, for one. And then big companies and big manufacturers, to more directly address your question, like the Magnas of the world and others, have many facilities all across the world. And they're not always orchestrated where one technology that's adopted in one plant easily translates to being adopted to the next plant. Usually they have different facility managers, plant managers. They equally have to be convinced of adopting that technology that was adopted in Germany over here in Michigan, for instance. So that's another issue. Now, the last question that I think is an important one is, when you're trying to convince your economic development partners that I4O should be a focus area, it's a pretty easy easy to convince argument, because essentially, the jobs that we're looking at losing are largely going to be manual jobs, just like what we did in the I3O wave of innovation. What our state already understands very well is that the technologies that are going to replace that are going to be the things I mentioned: next generation robotics, 3D printing, vision systems, wearable technology, connected products, all the software and that we've been talking about. So we're actively pursuing those companies, as they are going to be the high-tech jobs in the supply chain that are going to be here in Michigan, selling to our manufacturers, installing, servicing, repairing on a day-to-day basis. And those are going to be very high-tech jobs too. So,
which means high-paying jobs in most cases.
Yeah.
Lisa, I want to make a small note, okay? In no way was I downplaying the automotive industry. I think it's a great industry. What I was saying, first of all, you need to understand that in the last 2.5 years, I mean, a year and a half before Corona, it was a depressed industry in many ways. The share prices, the investment, therefore, so there was a high capacity that scaled back, and then came Corona, and we didn't use the cars in general. Okay, so I think it's an industry in a way in some distress, and like any cyclical industry, it will come out, and then it will obviously. By the way, I think the best thing that can happen to a wave like Industry 4.0 is a very good economic downturn, because it makes you focus on the bottom line and not just on the top line. It's good. Your product innovation, you worry about your sales. Now, when you have problem with the cash flow and with P&L, then you have to touch the holy grail of manufacturing and actually change things, which otherwise, why should you? It works. Don't touch it. As an engineer, that's what they swear you by before you graduate. If it works, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
And can you, the three of you, talk about if I mean, there's large companies that are listening to this. If I'm a large company and I'm not located in your country, so to speak, what is my intersection point with you?
If I can start, it's actually very, very easy, because I think what I said before is that nowadays it's very easy to find and engage with innovation without actually setting up shop and having a headquarter or any research R&D center in the country. Which, by the way, that's how we used to measure the strength of the ecosystem, is by the number of R&D centers we had in Israel. Now we measure by the number of innovation centers we have in Israel. And even that, believe me, is not the only way to measure it, because if you have a decent, proactive innovation guy that is well connected to headquarters and business units, coming up once a quarter to Israel, he can actually get to meet all the relevant companies and take them to meet the relevant people in his company in the different plants or different business units. And it's very, very effective. You don't even have to open it. Obviously, better to open shop. The ecosystem can know you better, but that's not a necessity. It's not a must as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
How about the rest of you? What is your suggestion if people have set problem statements? What is their your suggestion for intersection with you?
See, I would say, reach out to us. I think we are a one-stop shop for everything. That's how I, put it when, we interact with the industry. See, if you reach out to us, we'll be able to translate that into research. And, and I must tell you, I think, the research brain that India has, I think that's one of the best across the globe. When we then, as a part of this technology innovation hub itself, we have, set of incubators. And we have not defined it, or I would say dissected them in a way that they cater to one specialization. As of now, we are generalists. So I think the verticals that we are catering to, which is medical, Industry 4.0, agriculture, or defense. Anybody, if they have a problem statement defined for them, we can start from research. Create organizations out of the product that has come out. We have the capability to invest in the organizations who would want to run with the output that is coming out of the research in form of technology and output. We have a large enough market. I think India itself is like 1/6 of the overall global population. So if it is a B2C product, we are more than sufficient. If it is a B2B product, then we have trades countries across the world. It's a global economy now. You don't have to actually be based out of that country to sell your product. So I think this entire ecosystem is that we are trying to develop. And as I mentioned, we are a one-stop shop. So, would be looking forward to, people who are, who want to solve their problems.
Yeah.
And Ashutosh, could you, just one more question for you. There's a lot of companies, early stage companies elsewhere in the world that look at India and say, oh my God, huge market. I want to do that. Can you tell me, from your perspective, intersecting with earlier stage companies that are interested in manufacturing partners in India, is your expectation that they already have a lot of data around their outcomes? And I guess my question is it beneficial for a later stage company to intersect with manufacturing Industry 4.0 partners in India, or is it actually possible for early stage companies from the US or Israel to go straight into meeting with companies and customers in your market?
It does. It does. In fact, when I talked about the labor intensive country that we are, I think it offers a lot of advantages with respect to manufacturing. Government is also focusing a lot on manufacturing, and there are a lot of SOPs which are being rolled out to attract, organizations to set up their manufacturing hubs in the country. So, we actually want to be an alternative of China, in this, geography. So that's where the entire effort is going. And I'll share a personal experience with you. A couple of weeks back, we had an organization which is into, sort of Tesla for scooters. That's the way they want to, sell their product, and it's an amazing product that they have. They were getting it manufactured, in one of the cities of Europe, and they observed that, even if India is not the market for their product right now, they want to set up a manufacturing facility in India because of the geographical advantage, because of the kind of cost advantage it can bring to them. And Yari rightly mentioned, I think there are a lot of aspects, while, we continue to curse COVID, but there are a lot of positive aspects that, COVID has, brought along with itself, including digitization, including, need to look at the aspects which earlier, maybe a year back, people were not even looking at, cutting costs in manufacturing. You rightly said, Yari. So I think all these things are being relooked at. The industries are trying to redefine, their business models in, some cases. So a lot. It's a much wide open market, and it's for grabs. I think whosoever is able to, grow with respect to this, or offer the opportunities to businesses and industries with respect to this, is going to take away the thing. Yeah.
So Lisa, if I could add to that, I think with this being a global panel, it's important to talk about that. Each country has its own, advantages really for manufacturing, and some of it's low cost labor. It's also tax rates, and it's, loan and capital structures Yuri was talking about to, help with CapEx and operating X for new manufacturing facilities. So, all those things have to be considered. I think, a big part of our audience today, I'm guessing, is I4O tech companies, of course.
Yep.
And, obviously I4O tech is needed everywhere. There's no doubt about it. One thing I will say is in the United States in particular, that it's absolutely critical to drive every, dollar of margin out of our manufacturing operations, because we are competing on a global stage now like we've never done before. I mean, you can bid your manufacturing out on Alibaba and all these different, websites and connect with anybody to manufacture. So, for the U.S., it's absolutely critical. Our corporate partners have made it, many of them made it their top priority of investments as an I4O technology, because they have to, reduce any yield issues they have. They have to improve quality. They have to reduce operating expenditures. And they're going to be very likely, early adopters of this technology, and already are.
Yeah.
For that reason. That's the reason we launched this accelerator, is that we can globally, provide, whether companies in Israel, India, Germany, or otherwise, kind of a landing zone in the U.S. Michigan, no better place with 10,000 manufacturers, and then direct connections with all of the operational efficiency teams with very, very, very big manufacturers here in the state of Michigan.
And Dan, the point I'm hearing that you're trying to make is for early stage companies that are on here, they really need to understand the market in which they want to sell into, and how the pain point is different in a manufacturing, facility in automotive, if it's in the US versus in India, as an example. Is that correct? Yeah. No, I
absolutely
obviously understand. And for the three of you, I mean, we only have 10 minutes left. So again, encourage, we have three brilliant people from three different parts of the world. Encourage, whether it's startups or industry leaders, to reach out to them, whether it be on the summit site after this or through this chat. But as you guys think about your role, can you talk about success stories as it relates to either, how very solid examples of where you've either brought together academic, industry, and large corporate, and or worked with early stage companies? And I would just kind of like to do a round robin and have each one of you give us some super concrete examples of what success looks like.
Yeah, I can start if you want. There, one of our applicants out of Brazil has a really interesting inspection technology. So it uses light and camera to be able to determine defects in parts. Think of even in a paint booth in situ, right? And so you don't have to go back and do rework and that type of thing. And the company needed to, obviously, before they really set up operations here, needed first customers. So we were able to introduce them to many of our corporate partners that needed the technology. They were able to get some demos and pilots in place, and before you know it, customer orders. And then when they came here, they made a slow transition, but we helped them with identifying the right talent that they needed, and more importantly, the right strategic partners. Because in many cases, whether you're expanding from Brazil to the U.S. or U.S. to India or Israel or otherwise, you need those that can distribute, install, service, repair, the whole deal, right? And in this case, this company also it made complete sense to their business strategy to work with an existing robotic company that was already kind of a leader in coatings, right? So we connected that company to another company, and they literally developed a joint development agreement to actually take that new technology to market with their much larger global presence of customers. So.
And was there a role for government in that process?
The role for government was largely through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation to try to at least seed and nurture that company with funding. So we do have seed funds, including we have our own $1.3 million seed fund that is associated with the accelerator. So we made an investment in the company. And there's also a number of grants for early stage companies, non-dilutive, to help support the business and technical milestones of early stage companies. So we took advantage of that as well.
And does that require relocation of the company?
For some of the state grants, absolutely. Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Just curious. Okay, Yariv, could you walk us through an example, and especially focused on understanding kind of what were the roles of different people in the ecosystem in order to make that work?
So I think actually we have numerous examples, but when we look at the space that Ashutosh mentioned before, which is basically, I think, the most sought out line of solutions, or if you want, challenge area, and that is predictive maintenance, or dealing with downtime in general. There are many ways to deal with it, not just predictive maintenance. But I think, when we sort of categorize the challenges, this is definitely on the operational excellence side. This is the number one challenge that companies look for solutions. So we look at companies like Augury in Israel, which has just raised a few months ago their C round of over $50 million, and they've been able to sell, I think, double-digit these days in millions solutions, both the sensors as well as the AI behind it, to solve the issue of predictive maintenance in numerous industries. So they have like, I think, 6 applications in our guidebook for for 6 different industry verticals. And we keep introducing them to different companies. And interestingly enough, and we just hosted them in our conference a few months ago, they were able to partner with Grundfos, which is the largest manufacturer of pumps, and actually not offer them their solution, but actually connect their solution and capabilities to the pumps and generate a whole new product where Grundfos is actually selling the service of the pump rather than the pump itself. So it's actually a point where, or a case, very interesting one, where it's not about production innovation anymore. It was about product innovation and changing the entire business cycle and business model of a very large company. So that is a very good example, and it was very easy to keep do introduction for them, and they're in many companies in all continents, and their solution is highly regarded. We can look at a company like 3D Signals in discrete manufacturing in Germany. They started in Germany, now they're in other parts of Europe as well, and they basically turn the medium and smaller manufacturers, discrete manufacturers, and sort of open their eyes, allow them to see what is happening on the production floor digitally. You don't need to walk up to the machine to see what's happening, even when it's machines as old as 30 and 40 and even more years, but actually get to connect all of these into one hub and get visibility into what is happening in the factory. Obviously, at the manager's home as well. You can see it from everywhere. That's something that was like, they have this sort of commercial for them about, what does a baby looks like when you put the glasses he needs for the first time. Suddenly he sees the world. So that's another one. And there are different kind of solutions. By the way, an area that is less getting attention, at least in my view, it should have gotten much more attention. That is the cybersecurity of operation technologies. Everybody knows the problem. Very few actually go about trying to solve it. So we have a company, we have many of those in the area of Industry 4.0, but the one that we saw Microsoft acquire just a few months ago was CyberX. That was probably a first shot into their work, and they're just launching their Azure Industry 4 cloud, and I think they would be a much more dominant player in that field than they have been so far. It's a wake-up call for both Amazon, AWS, and Google in that sense. There's a lot to be done there. So these are just few examples. But I want to mention just 2 more things that are important. I think everybody, and especially companies in the audience, need to recognize that solving I4 solutions and allowing smaller companies to access I4 is going to be a very, very significant market. It seems more difficult, it seems smaller deals, but these people need it more than the big ones in many ways. And once you solve it, they are much quicker to adopt. So I think that's a very unique market to look at. And the final thing I want to offer is the problem of getting I4 solution to become SaaS solutions, really SaaS solutions, quickly to adopt and not very slowly to adopt. So we don't have time, but for the next panel.
Yeah. Agree on all of the above, and I'm absolutely aware that we've run out of time. Love the fact that we've got a startup that is in the chat talking about their predictive maintenance and giving you a shout out for focusing on that topic. But again, the role of this group was to help both large companies and startups understand that there are people in multiple markets trying to address this intersection. And help you understand what that intersection looks like. Emma also placed a comment in the chat section with a link to the B2B Wizard, so that any of you that are looking to link to either Israel, India, and or the US via Dan's program can have access to them directly. We can also obviously provide email confirmation of each one of them to your benefit. But I want to thank all of you, especially Ashutosh and Yariv that are in their evening, for joining us today to give us a glimpse of what's going on in your marketplace. And of course, thank you to Dan. So appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, thanks all.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you.